Alright, so here's a review on a Sperry Instruments circuit detector device. Now this, interesting, is when you do electrical work, it's a lot of investigative stuff to figure out how the previous guy did it. If you work in a town like I do here in Portland, Oregon, with a lot of historic houses that most of them were built with electrical in mind. I've worked on a couple that were, let's say, plumbed for gas. Obviously, you wouldn't want to run gas through those anymore. But a lot of different work had been done over the years in a lot of these places. Some had been through remodels, multiple remodels, partial remodels. And not everybody was mapping new circuits, especially when they're doing expansions on stuff. And so a lot of times I'm doing, half hour, 45 minutes of trying to trace a circuit to do 15 minutes of work and, let's say, replacing a socket or an outlet or something like that. The trick is you need to be able to turn power off for the one thing you're working on while everything else is still on. You don't tell everybody, hey, by the way, your place is going to go dark. Ran into that at an industrial location recently where we haven't been able to do the repair because we couldn't tell which panel to turn off, which breaker to turn off to cut one room without shutting the whole office down. So we ordered up one of these kits. This is probably, after a lot of research, the cheapest and most complete of its type without getting into hundreds of dollars. Now you can get circuit breaker finders that work on plugs only from Harbor Freight that are pretty good, and they're only like 20-25 bucks. This little kit was still, I think, under 70 from Amazon. It might be 80 or 90 if you get it at the local electrician tool supply store. A little bit of confusion in the Amazon ordering process too. I ordered it with the accessory kit for tracing other types of things, such as you can stick this in a light socket and trace a circuit on a light socket, or if you found bare wires someplace, you can use these little alligator clips on the bare wires and then trace that. Color-coded stuff like you would expect to see in household electrical. But the device itself has a lot of extra features. It kind of makes it a one-stop shopping thing that I think is going to find its way into my new, more deluxe, better than ever electrician toolbox. Okay, so unboxing and unraveling. This is a two-piece unit, so we pop this off. We popped the little tester head off. Now this also has one of these little circuit tester things that lights up. Basically, you don't want a red light and you want both orange lights on to tell you that you've hooked these all up to the proper function on when you've installed an outlet. So that replaces kind of a $5, $6 type thing, and then you press this to test on GFCI. Basically, it'll artificially create a short. Just to show this on an extension cord and how it works, we'll show how that works. To show this extension cord's getting proper power, we've got both orange LED lights on. The red is not on, which means we don't have any major faults happening. Where you might see the error codes on that, which are relatively universal, is in a house that was two-wire done with no ground, and then somebody adapted some stuff over. It may not be doing everything. And of course we've got an on. Now what this thing is going to do is it's going to send a signal down the line that would normally be picked up by the detector device as this is going. So this is what's used by anybody doing any kind of electrical installation is probably going to have a smaller version of this, which we would use for testing outlets. As I said, I'm putting together a little bit more of a deluxe toolbox now, and so this will be one of the main things. One of the problems is if you lose this, if you forget this somewhere, then your whole Sperry instrument thing, is less useful. So on the head unit, this is made to magnetically hold up to your breaker box while you use the probe separately to sense for which breaker this thing's sending a signal down the line to. Now no battery goes in this. This is just powered by whatever it's plugged into. This takes a 9-volt battery, which is included. We'll break out the old Leatherman tool, but basically we've got to undo this with a screwdriver to get that battery in. Here with the battery installed, we can turn this on. It goes through its own little self-check diagnostic thing, and basically says it's not detecting anything. Obviously, we're not near a breaker or anything like that. Now, if we were to place this near the line that we're trying to sense, let's see if we get anything out of that. No, not really. We're going to have to go to the breaker and see what it gives us at the breaker, because normally I can sniff a line with that thing, but well, we're going to go downstairs to the breaker and see what we can sniff with it. It might have been a couple seconds in the video. It was a week on my end. I went to test one of these things and it was bad. Okay, so we've had to replace it. Here's the sender units plugged into an outlet on a known circuit. This is the orange wire coming through here. Now, I remember when this was installed, what we're looking for, I'm cheating, is this one. So we've got the unit, it's magnetic, it's stuck up to the thing here. We've got the probe, just kind of, you undo it from the back side, let it dangle. The sending unit gets mated to the probe at the factory. If you get a mismatch one, you got to send it back. Okay, so the other one's going back to Amazon. I kept it long enough so I could test everything together, and basically these sending units have to be synchronized with the receiving units. So this goes through its own little self-diagnostic when you turn it on. It's got a fresh battery, so we know that's what's going to be happening. We also know that when we have the two orange lights up here, it means the circuit's good. If we had a red light, we would have a problem, or if we only had one orange light, we would have a problem. So as we go through the breakers here, there's a number of 20 amp breakers, and that's because this particular box feeds a couple of small outbuildings. And what we're going to do is we know that appliance plugs are going to get off of two legs of the power coming into the building, and most houses are going to have 220, 240 power coming into the building, and then that gets split off into the other power that's powering the rest of the building. Industrial locations can have multiple 220, 240 leads and three-phase, four-phase power coming into the building. When we're just trying to trace a single 110, 120 single-phase circuit, this is what we're going to do. But it's going to give us some readings on some of the 220 circuits, because it is backfeeding a signal. It's backfeeding a little signal. And so this is effectively just a very short-range, relatively sensitive antenna. And we're going to see the reaction as we point the probe side. That's that little anvil head thing. We're going to see the reaction as I run this down. Here we're getting warm, but that is just because it's close to where it is electrically, and the box zigzags back in here. So that's not our one, but that could give you a false reading. So if you watch the video all the way through, you're going to see what the real reading and a false reading are going to do for you. Okay, so here I'm going on the others. Here we're getting a little reaction. Okay, this tells me we're close, but we're electrically close, and we're not physically close. Okay, now here we're getting that reaction. Normally you would think, okay, we're in the money, right? But when we look at this, this is a 220 breaker that's giving me both the visible and the audio tone. But it's not our one. We have to use logic. We're after a single phase breaker, which is here. And here's the difference. Here I'm on the right one. Here I'm on the wrong one. So you need to kind of get a feel for the way that's going to bounce and what your audio tones are. Test these on known circuits. And you still want to double check things. You still need to be able to flick that switch and do this. The reason these things are used by professional and higher end amateur electricians is so that you can leave some things turned on while you're working on something on a circuit. But you work on circuits turned off. Okay, guys, I want to talk about that macho stuff about hot work. No, you turn things off before you work on them. I haven't been shocked in years, okay, and that's because I turn things off when I'm working on them. But what something like this does is it adds a lot to client convenience, where you're only going to turn off the stuff that you're working on. One of the big advantages of something like this for a homeowner who wants to spend, let's say, an afternoon mapping out the circuits in a house, is that if you're looking at the option of hiring an electrician, and that's a $50 to $150 an hour proposition, even your Craigslist guy who's going to do this, there's nobody's below $25 an hour for that kind of work. And if you're talking about a contractor who's billing for it, 60, 70, 80, 125, entirely normal. You spend 4 or 5 hours tracing the circuits in your house, rewriting the map on these things, relabeling everything with a newer, better labeler, then you are greatly reducing the amount of money that you need to spend when you bring that guy in to just change a few outlets and he can't figure out what breakers go to what outlets. Because for him to sit there and do that detective work and diagnose and figure out which breaker goes where, you're going to be paying him by the hour, okay? And you're probably paying 50 plus an hour. You maybe get the Craigslist handyman who knows this stuff. Well, I can tell you it's 1 out of 100 who know this stuff, who's going to do this for under 50 bucks an hour. But you're talking about a $50 to $80 tool, which a lot of these guys don't even have. Now, high-end professionals are going to have one with a little more digital control, but this Sperry is pretty good for the money. It's one of those items that's kind of a wobbler, a little borderline thing between professional grade and amateur grade. A professional who doesn't have one probably has something better. A professional who doesn't have this and doesn't have something better is probably a professional you shouldn't be taking all that seriously. But there are some old school guys who lived without these for a long time. But this is going in my electrician kit, and it's going to stay there, and we'll be seeing this on future jobs.